That the S21 Plus is the middle child in the S21 series is a given, but is it an awkward one, or is it actually a confident middle child? Is it worth buying over the S21 Ultra or the iPhone 12? I will answer all of these questions and more in my full review. I'm Arshad, you're watching MySmartPrice English. Let's get this video started. But before we move on, don't forget to hit that red subscribe button and the bell icon right next to it to get notified whenever MySmartPrice English puts out an awesome new tech video. The most distinctive difference coming from the slightly curved display on the S21 Ultra is the flat panel on the Galaxy S21 Plus. Now, whether you like them flat or curvy is a personal preference at the end of the day. Now, while I mostly like flat panels, the S21 Ultra's curvature is not too pronounced. Also, the flat panel means the phone digs into your palm slightly more compared to the curved panel on the S21 Ultra. Now, these are actually nitpicks, and if you don't ever hold an S21 Ultra for comparison, you won't really care. Also, the S21 Plus feels much lighter and more comfortable to use as well. I also like the fact that you get the same great Corning Gorilla Glass Victus protection on the front and the rear. Plus, there's IP68 dust and water resistant certification as well. There are a couple of other design flourishes. You get the S21 and the S21 Plus in a few different funky hues apart from the standard Phantom Black and Phantom Silver. The one we have is the Phantom Violet, and it looks good, especially thanks to its matte finish. However, I'm firmly in the matte black or nothing clan, so I'd go for the Phantom Black variant any day. While the rear glass gets the Phantom Violet finish, the accent color is rose goldish on the metal frame that breaks into the seemingly seamless camera module. I say seemingly because there is definitely a line break that you can see, and the module is actually a separate piece. Regardless, I dig this design, but yes, it does wobble on a flat surface. Coming to the display on the front, the panel is slightly smaller at 6.7 inches compared to the 6.8 inch screen on the S21 Ultra. I mean, it feels like both the phones are of the same size, so that doesn't really matter. Anyway, Samsung has removed the QHD Plus resolution setting on the S21 Plus, and the peak brightness is lower at 1300 nits compared to 1500 nits on the S21 Ultra. Now, does this make a huge difference in regular usage? Nah, you actually get the same great display quality, especially when it comes to colors or brightness, and most importantly, the same awesome 120Hz refresh rate as well. But yes, the display nerds will definitely notice that the S21 Ultra does look slightly more premium and crisp with QHD Plus resolution. As for the iPhone 12's display compared to the S21 Plus, the S21 Plus is unequivocally better thanks to the higher brightness and a higher refresh rate of 120Hz. The S21 Plus obviously doesn't have the same 108 megapixel sensor on the S21 Ultra. You get a 12 megapixel unit instead. The specs on the S21 Plus's cameras are very similar to last year's S20 Plus, except for that TOF camera. Good riddance, I suppose. Now, to check the camera quality and the performance of the S21 Plus, I actually did a quick camera comparison, so let's begin. After capturing the pictures to check the details in these pictures, I was shocked at how much Samsung has managed to match the performance. Thanks to the large 1.8 micron pixel size of the S21 Plus's main 12 megapixel sensor, it actually matches the pixel bin 12 megapixel shots from the 108 megapixel sensor of the S21 Ultra. In fact, if you look at the bookshelf, you will find that the S21 Plus shot has better focus because the focal plane is narrower on the f/1.8 lens connected to the 108 megapixel camera. As for the HDR performance, I noticed in our first sample that the S21 Ultra manages to capture very slightly better details in the shadows, but in the second sample you can't really tell the difference. For the most part, the HDR performance is very similar, but I did notice that the S21 Ultra was faster to focus thanks to the laser autofocus. And when it comes to colors captured by the two phones, tell me if you can tell any differences. If I didn't tell you, you'd think both the pictures were shot by the same phone. Now, the S21 Ultra takes a massive leap ahead when it comes to telephoto. And here's where I need to highlight that the lens attached to the 64 megapixel camera has an aperture of only 29mm, which means it does 1.1x optical zoom. Laughable, really. But the hybrid zoom takes it to 3x. However, despite all of Samsung's valiant efforts, hybrid zoom is no proper optical zoom. Just take a look at the sharpness and the quality of the S21 Ultra shot. In fact, when you look at the 10x zoom shot, you will clearly see how the S21 Plus cannot match up to the natural sharpness of the S21 Ultra. As for the ultra wide, you get the same camera practically, you won't see any differences whatsoever. In portraits, I noticed that the facial tones captured by the S21 Plus were more accurate, but whether it was the edge detection or the portrait blur or the details, the S21 Plus and the S21 Ultra were on par. Nothing to tell the two apart. In close-ups, the S21 Ultra makes use of the focus enhancer mode to switch to the ultra-wide angle camera. This means you can go very close to the subject for crisp shots. You will notice how shooting a close-up with 108 megapixel camera causes blurring around the edges of the doll. Now if you're talking about the S21 Plus, I think that it's pretty good at close-ups too. It feels like I'm playing the same tune over and over again, but even 4K 60fps videos look similar from both the rear and the front camera, except for the fact that I like the facial tones of the S21 Plus in the video. When it comes to selfies, the 10 megapixel pixel bin selfies from the 40 megapixel selfie camera on the S21 Ultra are almost of similar quality as the 10 megapixel capture on the S21 Plus. Again, the same scenario. Whether it is with the light on your face or against your face, even the portraits look very similar. Even the low-light selfies look very similar. I mean, Samsung has really done a lot to maintain the picture performance here. Now, I expected the S21 Ultra to completely obliterate the S21 Plus in low light, but that didn't happen either. I mean, you do get slightly sharper pictures and it is faster to shoot and process, but the end results, if you don't pixel peep, look very similar on the S21 Plus and the S21 Ultra. And with night mode on, the Ultra does have slightly more accurate color science. Honestly though, I'm genuinely surprised at the end results where it is very similar. Now from my time with the cameras, the only real difference between the S21 Ultra and the S21 Plus is the fact that the S21 Ultra takes better telephoto shots, of course because it has better telephoto cameras. Having said that, when you look at the other cameras across the board, which includes the front camera, the ultra wide and the main camera, then the S21 Plus actually matches up. In fact, I expected the 108 megapixel sensor on the rear and the 40 megapixel sensor on the front of the S21 Ultra to be far better than the S21 Plus, which wasn't really the case, and that is what is shocking to me. If you're paying so much more than a lakh for the S21 Ultra, it should have had way better cameras in my opinion, so that's really not happening. Now inside the S21 Plus, you have the same Exynos 2100 that we found in the S21 Ultra. I've done a proper performance test against the Snapdragon 888, do watch it. You'll see that pop up in a card right now. Now I got the same great performance, albeit with slightly lower numbers, because the S21 Ultra we have is the 12 256GB variant, whereas the S21 Plus is the 8 128GB variant. Also, it is UFS 3.0 storage compared to UFS 3.1 on the S21 Ultra, which is why you can see that the storage benchmark numbers are lower. Regardless, the daily performance and gaming was just excellent on the S21 Plus. There were no heating issues either. Yes, but it does throttle a bit after more than 30 minutes of continuous gaming, but we also have to see how Snapdragon 888 performs in that regard. As for the battery, you get a 4800 mAh unit instead of the 5000 mAh one inside the S21 Ultra. The difference in battery capacity is not much, but my battery life experience was not as good on the S21 Plus in comparison to the S21 Ultra. On the S21 Ultra, at FHD plus 120Hz setting, I always got over 6 hours and 30 minutes of screen on time. But on the S21 Plus, I couldn't go past 5 hours. Now the reason for this, I feel, is the fact that the S21 Ultra actually uses a newer LTPO display, which can go from 10Hz to 120Hz. Whereas on the S21 Plus, it can only go from 48Hz to 120Hz. Call performance is great too, with no call drops and crystal clear sound as well. The only thing missing when you take the network performance into the account is support for Wi-Fi 6E, otherwise it is all good. Honestly, after using the S21 Plus, I feel like it is the awkward middle child. It's only a stripped down variant of the S21 Ultra and doesn't offer much more compared to the S21, which, by the way, thanks to its size, has a distinctive character to it. Now don't get me wrong, the S21 Plus is not really a bad phone, and you could argue that the performance is very similar on the S21 Ultra as well, but that's not convincing me enough. Having said that, I'm still very surprised that the rear camera, the front camera and the ultra wide, all of them match in performance the S21 Ultra, and the S21 Ultra of course only has the telephoto advantage. But you know what? That same argument can be made for the smaller S21 as well. So when you compare the S21 Plus to the iPhone 12, which is basically in the same ballpark price range, then the S21 Plus does have some redeeming factors. For example, the display is way better, and of course you do get a telephoto camera as well. But the iPhone 12, if you don't care about these two things, definitely will win you over with its performance, photography chops, and of course the fact that it is far more comfortable. But when you're looking at iOS versus Android, it is never an apples to apples comparison, notwithstanding the fact that Apple is a company that makes the iPhone 12. Please let it slide. Now it will obviously boil down to personal preference. So finally, do think it through before you splurge 82,000 rupees on the S21 Plus, or like I mentioned in my previous video, wait for a price drop because that is eventually bound to happen with the Galaxy S21 series. So do let me know in the comment section below what you thought about our full review of the S21 Plus. Until next time, this is Aishar from MySmartPrice English signing off. Goodbye and Godspeed, my friends.